All right, everyone, welcome back to our GS Education Summit. I'm very excited about the next panel because it reflects an exciting initiative. You would all be aware that the federal government has committed to a 30% digital games tax offset. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, we don't have many details about its inner workings just yet, but I think we can all agree that this is a once in a generation opportunity for the Australian games industry. As such, it's also very likely to have an impact on games-related education. So I'm looking forward to exploring this further with our three panelists, Alex Carlyle, David Giles, and Robert Walkley. Before we start the discussion, can you please introduce yourself? Alex, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the Creative Director for Wargaming Sydney. And yeah, really excited to be part of this panel and this discussion today.
Thank you, Alex. David?
So I'm David Giles. I'm the executive producer at Tantalus Media. I've been making games for about 30 years now. And if we are talking briefly about AAA titles, my experience with that was on God of War as the senior managing producer for the art team for a couple of years.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And we have Rob.
Hi, my name is Robert Walkley. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hipster Whale, the creators of Crossy Road. I've been in the games industry since about 1997. I've worked in a lot of Australian studios. I taught games programming at SAE, and I also worked at ArenaNet in Washington on Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for the intro. So while the details of the game's tax offset are still somewhat scarce, it is very likely that it'll put Australia on the map of some bigger international developers, publishers, and investors. And as such, it is very likely to result in the acceleration of AAA production in the country. So for some context, and I guess to frame the discussion, how exactly could that AAA production look like? David, let's start with you with that one.
So I think initially anyway, they will see Australia as a resource pool. So it would be, as we know, lots of the larger publishers now develop titles across continents. So they just can't do it in one studio. The credit list is moving towards the thousands now. So it would be, a company like Ubisoft, if they're working on a new Assassin's Creed, that will be, in multiple locations. Activision and Call of Duty will be doing that across the world. So there's a good chance that they'll be looking to Australia and saying, well, it's financially, beneficial to have a chunk of the team in Australia. We just need to see how many people we can, have working on this title there. So the staff will have to be at a caliber to be able to handle that. That level of work, and at least initially anyway.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And I mean, Alex, someone who's also part of a huge global network of studios. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. I came to Australia 15, 16 years ago to help set up Team Bondi. And, that was a studio where we were obviously making a large production with Rockstar, and we were the lead studio. But even back then, it was working with global teams and other studios around the Rockstar organization. So I would absolutely tend to agree with what David's point was. At Wargaming Sydney, we do distributed development on every single title that we make. It doesn't matter where you are. There will be studios that take the lead, but even with us in Sydney, we do co-development, and we're currently working, with the UK team on a production. So I would say that there'd be a large leaning that would be the correct kind of assessment, that as AAA makes its way into Australia, it's likely to be in partnership or serving other studios, at least initially. And then even when it gets underway, even studios that start driving their own content here are likely to be partnering with other studios around the world anyway.
Yeah, great. Well, I guess the central question then is, how will this affect education? What challenges will this environment pose for educators? Rob, from a programming perspective, what's your take on this? Could you give an example?
It's really exciting to welcome the opportunity for the Australian sort of development scene to be able to contribute to worldwide development and AAA. It really it serves as a bit of a reminder about sticking to the fundamentals for education, I think. There's been a tendency over the last several years for the Australian scene to be sort of more orienting towards the indie type of development. So perhaps there's been some pressure for sort of higher level tools and processes. But if anything, I think this kind of serves as a reminder that the fundamentals are always critically important, because you know, when you have that strong, solid base, you can you know, specialize and adapt to you know, custom engines and you know, yeah, any problem that's not just sort of like an off the shelf, you know, can't be solved with an off the shelf engine. So in terms of programming, you know, your fundamentals like C++ and C, you know, I think they're really always good, strong, solid skills to have. And I think once you have those core skills, it's quite easy to pick up higher level languages like perhaps C# or any other higher level tools. So, and then of course, you know, the fundamentals like the math and data structures and algorithms and all that sort of, all that good stuff. I think that it's always really important and never goes to waste, that type of knowledge.
Sure. David already alluded to the fact that within AAA, we now have, you know, thousands of people potentially involved in a title. So I would assume that that would also mean a huge degree of specialization in terms of where these people are active. And then looking at the Australian education system, would it be fair to say that, you know, we might need to brace ourselves for conflict between you know, the generalization that is taught in the education system that it often caters to, when in this new world there will be a huge focus on specialization? You know, Alex, what, you know, having worked in both education as well as AAA, where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked about this before amongst ourselves. I think, you know, there is obviously benefits to having a wider generalization skill set, which makes you adaptable. And Rob, you know, when we were having that conversation before, mentioned that. But I think there's also, especially within the AAA space, the demand for high level expertise in specific areas, which allow you to push, you know, the boundaries of what you're doing in, you know, design, art, technology. And so there will be an increasing demand in that space. I think a really interesting point that I was having a discussion with the art director in Sydney, and we were talking about what would the, you know, the art team look like for our future developments. We do a lot of partnerships, as I was mentioning before, co-developments, and we also do a lot of smaller projects and starting projects, you know, like concepting, phase prototyping, all with the aim to do a large-scale development further down the line. And the way, you know, historically we might have structured an art team is we would have, you know, built an in-house team and have, you know, 50, 100, 150, 200 people, you know, they're pumping out your asset creation. I think right now what we look for is much more high level technical art skills, people that are adaptable, people that can really get into, you know, the blueprints, have actually a much better understanding of the technology side of what's going on, and can partner with engineers to push stuff. And we would outsource a lot of the main artists roles that we would traditionally have had in-house, because it's much more cost effective. So having people that that are highly skilled and have more technical know-how, so that they're more adaptable to what our needs are, and a smaller proportion of those, than rather than just the bigger pool of large, not like numbers of resources, if you like.
Okay. I mean, what are some steps that educators can potentially take to address this, to meet these demands of this new world? Is it a matter of, for example, highlighting the number of roles that actually exist in this production? You know, people don't know what they don't know. There might be this really niche specialization that's nevertheless very important. You know, is it starting with that, just making this a bit more visible? Dave, what do you reckon, David?
So I think so I looked after the AIE in Melbourne for a while, and so I know the limitations that you know, educators have on you know, it's to do with your skill set of your staff, all of those sorts of things. And there are niche areas within game development that, you know, only a few people in the world know about. You know, there are sort of So I guess it's a thing where we need staff to be trained up in the general areas, but it's sort of almost impossible to cover all those specializations. So I guess if there's a way of the institutions to sort of say, all right, we're going to allow 6 months of specialization that the student's going to, work on themselves. It's like a research project. What they want to do, whether it's, I just want to specialize in pathfinding or rendering, whatever it is, but they have an area of interest that they want to focus on, then the course will allow that to happen. And so it may be beyond the expertise of the lecturers at the time, but it means that when the student graduates and goes out there, they say, look, I've got all these general areas, but I've also focused in on this one particular area that I found really, really interesting, and I know a lot about this. And so whether they go in that direction or not, it's always a good thing for them to have self-taught, learnt these sorts of things. Because at the end of the day, when they go out into the industry, we don't even know what's going to be happening in the next year or so. It's evolving at such a great rate. So the one thing they need to be able to do is do self-learning, to, do their own research into a particular solution, look around the world at how things are being handled in this area. So I think that would be a really useful component to any sort of course that's being sort of generated at the moment.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a matter, as you once put it, of unlocking the institution and creating this sort of space of flexibility for students to explore these pathways.
Yeah, for sure. And if it's a thing too where I've seen courses that have been written based around the expertise of the staff, and that at the end of the day doesn't go anywhere in as far as addressing sort of the needs of industry. Whereas I also know the industry saying, I need someone that knows exactly this thing, and that also isn't a solution because that changes from year to year. So there needs to be the flexibility and the generalization plus the ability to specialize. And yes, I think that reads really, really well when a student is applying for work, that they've got that under their belt as well.
I think you raised a really good point there, Dave, with when you describe it as ability to specialize. We talked earlier about if for anyone who might have anxiety about, if I pick this particular specialization, then I'm going to be boxed into that area. We all agreed that it was actually super valuable if we have applicants come to us and they've demonstrated the ability to be able to teach themselves and be able to go down an area of specialization, then that just proves to us that they're well equipped to be able to take on any specialization should that change, or should the demands change. So so don't think of it as the specialization itself so much as the skills that you gain when you specialize, so that you can demonstrate to employers that you have the ability to learn. And so I also, when I was teaching, I used to think of ourselves at an undergrad level as almost like tour guides. We sort of take the students on a tour of the scope, but we could never go down to that, the level of depth, because you could go infinitely deep in any area. But so that when you were saying, Jens, about what you don't know, you don't know. I mean, that's part of what an educator can do, is like take them on a tour of that breadth, and then hope that students pick up a particular passion that they can drill deep on.
Yeah, I think just to add further weight to David and Rob on this call, just absolutely follow that and say attitude, enthusiasm, and showing that drive for self-learning are the key things that we would look for to hire. Even, we'd probably rank them above the skills that they've got. If you can demonstrate a passion, you've gone out there and learned something, whether or not it's directly applicable to what you're going to be doing, just the fact that you've done it is the thing that's going to set you aside from the other people that are applying for that job.
It puts the ball in your court as an applicant too, because you have something that you can talk at depth about. Yeah. Often the interviewers are just as nervous as the interviewee, and they're sort of, and the vacuum will be filled by the expertise of the interviewer. But if the interviewee can fill that vacuum, then it benefits both the applicant and the employer actually.